Good day everyone, and good day to our dear pastor and instructor, Sir Emmanuel Manzano. I am Jaila Bidumagit from BSED Social Studies. The book was assigned to me is the Book of Job. So the Book of Job, or simply Job, is the book found in the Ketuvim section of the Hebrew Bible, and is the first of the poetic books in the Old Testament of the Christian Bible. Scholars are generally agree that it was written between the 7th and 4th centuries before Christ's era. The Book of Job is considered a literary masterpiece. It belongs to the genre of wisdom literature or speculative wisdom, as it questions commonly held principles and assertions. So the Book of Job is the 18th and 66 books in the Bible, and it is found in the Old Testament before the Book of Esther, and it has 42 chapters. The Book of Job is divided in two sections of prose narrative, consisting of prologue, the chapters 1 and 2, and an epilogue, chapter 42, verse 7 to 17, and intervening poetic disputation, the chapters 3 to 42, verse 1 to 6. So, who is the author and the audience of the book? According to the ancient Jewish tradition, they claim that the Book of Job was written by Moses. The Talmud Sota and Baba Bathra 14b and 15a say he wrote it before writing the Pentateuch, or the 5 book of Moses. And according to the Old Bible, the intended audience is the nation of Israel as a reminder of what God had done for them. Why it is written? It is because to show us the sovereignty of God, how to remain faithful through persecution, suffering, and loss. Central theme. So the book's theme is the eternal problem of unmerited suffering, and it is named after its central character, Job, who attempts to understand the sufferings that engulf him. So Job's story is very common, and I know you are very familiar with this story. But for those who didn't know the story, let me give you a brief summary of the story. So this legend concerns Job, a prosperous man of outstanding piety. Satan acts as an agent, provocateur to test whether or not Job's piety is rooted merely in his prosperity, but faced with the appealing loss of his possessions, his children, and finally his own health, Job still refuses to curse God. But after all what happened to him, and he still remains faithful, God returned everything to him, and he even multiplied it. So ang sa story ni Job is that si Satan, niya siya kay God niya, si Job daw, faithful lang daw siya katungod, gina-prosper siya ni God. So, moto gingan niya si God nga, kaning testingan daw nila si Job. So, gi-allow to ni God nga, itest daw si Job. So, moto, nagikuha tanan kay Job, yung family, yung ari-arian, yung kaning mga ayop niya, and even yung mga friends, kuha na siya kanang, kuhaan ba? Gisalikoy na siya sa iyang friend, and then nagkasakit po siya, pero si Job naging faithful, gihapon siya kay God. Pero after that, gibalik po ni God tanan nga nawala sa iya, and gimultiply pag gani hinuon ni God. So mo to story ni Job. So it is pointing about suffering and divine justice. So the Bible's Book of Job explores the question of why good people sometimes endure senseless suffering, particularly why God seems to allow such senseless suffering. The story centers on Job, a thriving patriarch whose prosperity seems to be the reward for his upstanding behavior. So when God permits Satan to inflict disease and devastating losses on Job, it seems from a human perspective that divine justice has somehow gone awry. Some scholars said that central theme is not Job's suffering. Rather, the focus is God's revelation of himself during Job's suffering. God uses suffering to instruct us. In the last chapter, Job summarized what he learned about God. So how God is portrayed in the book of Job. God has the sovereign right to bestow blessing on whomever he chooses. He also has the rightful authority to withhold blessing and bring calamity on whomever he chooses. However, God ordains he remains sovereign and worthy of worship. But some people misunderstood God in this story. They thought that God forsake his servant Job. they thought that he gambled with Satan, for God agreed to Satan's challenge. This is one of the reasons why we need to ask God wisdom for us to understand what His words teaching us. Lesson you can get from Job's story is we see the value of patience, perseverance, and the importance of holding our tongue, not to mention God's faithfulness, restorative power, and goodness. What we endure is not in vain. After the storm, there is God, a God who restores everything. What happens in your life has a purpose. What allows God in your life has a purpose. But sometimes, God allows things to us for us to prepare in something great. And in that process, you will grow spiritually and be prosperous. That's all for the book of Job, and if you are curious about Job's story, I encourage you to read it for yourself in the Bible. Have a one-on-one time with God so we'll deeply understand this testimony of Job.